It is, even by President Obama's own admission, the single biggest legislative accomplishment of his administration thus far. Healthcare reform, or as even he took to calling it, Obamacare, promising expanded coverage to millions of Americans for the most part beginning next year. But then last week came this surprise announcement. A critical rule of Obamacare is being delayed, not for the individual mandate, that requirement that all Americans either purchase health coverage or face a fine, but rather for the employer mandate. That's the portion of the law that requires larger employers, companies with 50 employees or more, to provide coverage for their workers or pay penalties. And as the Times noted, the decision postpones the effective date beyond next year's midterm elections. That fact obviously opening the delay to accusations that the White House is playing politics with the law, pushing back that pain to the benefit of Democratic incumbents and candidates for the House and Senate. But the official line from the administration is that they have heard concerns about the complexity of the requirements and the need for more time to implement them effectively. But Obamacare, of course, always has been and will continue to be a political hot potato. Conservative billionaire bankrollers Charles and David Koch have now pledged to spend more than $1 million on an ad campaign, much like these ads from their advocacy group Americans for Prosperity, focusing not on the recently announced delay, but on the law in general, aiming the ad campaign at women in particular, asking people, as one ad puts it, quote, "How do I know my family is going to get the care they need? Can I really trust the folks in Washington with my family's health care?" Obamacare still confusing and divisive, according to the most recent polls. The Kaiser Health tracking poll shows 40% of Americans view the law unfavorably, 35% view it favorably, and 24% do not know. And for this conversation, we are joined on our panel by Brandon Bryce, Republican strategist and columnist for the Washington Times community section. Brandon, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
What's your gut take on this? Is this a policy tweak, or is this playing politics to push it off after the midterm?
Well, I think it's the sad part about it is that the president has been playing politics with this issue since day one. I think even when you took a look at the terminology, when it said that you have access to quality health care, just because you have access doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have health care coverage. And I think the biggest health care issue is no one in Washington has actually read the legislation. Congressman John Conyers was one of the first people that said, out of I think it's a 2,000-page document, many House officials haven't even read the legislation, yet they're passing it, and they're mandating people to have a $2,500 mandate.
But that's a 4-year-old argument at this point.
But that's still a relevant argument till this day. What do you mean that's all I got? What American can actually cover their pay?
4 years ago? We're going to see
a major issue.
Millions of Americans without health care coverage get health care coverage. There may be many a flaw in that process, but the choice is between you guys who are saying, let's trust the insurance companies, and moving the American healthcare system into the kind of posture that every other industrialized nation has, where everybody is covered. That seems to me going to increase the gross national health much, much more than sitting back there taking pot shots about what might have happened 4 years ago.
How about we look at the real culprits here? And the real culprits is, when you're talking about access to quality health care, it's an insurance reform bill. The legislation has very little to actually do with health care coverage. Can you agree with that?
I don't understand it, so I can't agree with it, and I can't
disagree with it. And neither can those in Washington.
Brandon, that was at the behest of Republicans for the most part, to make it more palatable to Republicans. You couldn't squeeze out insurance companies and go single payer.
We should have gone single payer.
Right. So keeping the healthcare companies in the loop was part of the thing that got this to pass in the first place.
Right. I mean, on top of not only keeping healthcare companies as a part of this, but also looking at the fact that just the president is mandating individuals, people, to pay a mandate. That's unconstitutional. And to say that we actually require healthcare, the real issue. The real issue here is that we're not talking about a healthcare issue in this country. We're talking about a jobs issue in this country. The number one thing that people are concerned about when they lose their job is they're losing their healthcare coverage.
Better than this.
And you know this.
This is the Mitt Romney plan.
This is the American plan. The fact that there are no
the
jobs.
The notion that you have to buy auto insurance, right?
You have to.
Is that unconstitutional?
That's not unconstitutional.
But health care is unconstitutional?
But why is it mandated that you actually purchase this?
You may argue that it's a bad
thing,
thing, but if you agree you can mandate auto insurance, then you lose the constitutional argument from the get-go.
And Brandon, the Supreme Court ruled that it's constitutional.
They did, and I actually disagree with that ruling because
they get the final say on what's constitutional and what's not. So let's not go down the it's not constitutional track. But Richard, The Obama administration, it seems to me, has bungled this thing from day one, not in terms of necessarily what it does, but in how they sell it and what people know about it. And too many people don't know anything at all about it.
This will come out in the wash. If this covers millions of people, if kids who are now losing coverage at 21 are actually covered till they're 26 and 27 and 28, and then beyond that, if families know that if they have a health catastrophe, it's not going to break the family apart, then America will go not bad. If, on the other hand, it breaks down because of this guerrilla war that they're waging on it, every chance they can get. This is a guy who, from the point of view of Republicans, can't do anything right. Will you please say something?
Amen.
All right.
No, you want me to say something?
No.
I can't believe that I agree with you. No.
You're making progress.
Wow.
But there, I mean, I have to be honest about this. It does smell of politics. I mean, if you're the Obama White House and Democrats, do you really want to energize a vote to come out against you with midterm elections? I mean, and the answer is obviously no. But Brodsky does make a good point
That'll
here.
be Mr. Brodsky to you.
Mr. Brodsky.
There we go.
I like the guy. But he does make a good point. Because I know firsthand, you mentioned the kids when they aged out of insurance at 21, but under this plan, you know, you continued. I know for a fact, because when my daughter graduated from school, she would have been without any insurance, but it continued for an additional 3-4 years.
But that was one of the first parts of the bill that went into law, the 26-year-old extension.
Yes.
This is now we're facing in 2014 the third national election since the passage of Obamacare, and it has been a cudgel for Republicans ever since, primarily because a lot of people don't know and there's so much
There is
misinformation.
still fear of the unknown with this bill. No one in Washington knows what's actually in this legislation.
There's fear of the unknown and people fanning those fears.
Fear of unknown, people fanning the fears, and if this president walks left, the right says he should have went right and then went left.
And if he walks right, they complain about that.
Right.
There's nothing he can do.
There's nothing he can do.
I disagree with that.
Quickly around the table, is Obamacare an issue in 2014, and who does it help more? Dom.
It's going to be an issue. We have to wait and see how it plays out. But Hillary Clinton's going to find a way to walk around all of this anyway.
Well, that's in 2016.
Oh, you said 2014.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Definitely an issue in 2014.
Helping Republicans?
Republicans will hope that it's an issue.
Brandon?
2014, if the Republicans, I think, continue to push it in women votes, but I think ultimately immigration will play much more role down the line and down the years.
Oh, we're getting to that next segment. Richard?
All the stuff the Republicans hate, immigration reform, Obamacare, electoral fairness, all that stuff will be really good for the Republicans next year. It's a party going down the tubes as fast as they can run to the right. If they're going to change, it's because they're going to listen to some of the more moderate figures who are being squeezed out of the party.
You may be singing a different tune,
that.
Richard, if this helps them win the Senate back in 2014. We're going to take a quick break here on RFL. When we come back, President Obama has signed very few pieces of legislation this year, but why? Here's a hint, it's not because his pen doesn't work. We're going to break down why D.C. is the capital of inaction. That's next.